An extraordinary operation that began with intelligence and unfolded amidst the waves of the Black Sea. Between 1919 and 1922, events took place that influenced not only one nation but the fate of many. Incidents that today most people have never even heard of. If they had occurred elsewhere, would certainly be remembered as a source of national pride. In this video, we bring to light one of those lesser-known stories. Who would have thought that two small gunboats could capture a massive merchant ship? The vessel in question was the Enosis, weighing about 1,300 tons. It was stopped by two tiny gunboats acquired from Soviet Russia on the orders of Mustafa Kemal Pasha. As the Great Offensive drew near, the Turkish army under Mustafa Kemal Pasha was completing its final preparations. The aim was to face the Greek army on at least equal terms. The army was rebuilt from nothing. And when we say from nothing, it is no exaggeration. People were even asked to donate socks. While the land army slowly grew stronger, the navy was very limited. The Ottoman fleet still in Istanbul was under Allied control, and many Turkish vessels in the Black Sea had been sunk by Greek patrols. Only a handful of medium-sized boats remained, making risky supply runs to strengthen the front. In this context, two small 11-meter gunboats acquired from the Soviets were being prepared for a historic mission. From our intelligence officer Firuz Bey, at a Russian port came an important message. At Enosis harbor, there was a ship named Enosis. It carried sacks full of gold to be shipped across the Black Sea to Greece. These were treasures left over from the wealthy of the old Russian regime and were being smuggled out. Part of the gold was also intended for the Greek front in Anatolia. To disguise the operation, traders were brought aboard, and many commercial goods were loaded onto the ship. The two Turkish gunboats immediately set out. To avoid suspicion, their weapons were initially left in Trabzon. One of the captains was Lieutenant Nekati, the other Lieutenant Reshat. For Captain Reshat, this mission carried personal meaning. 1 year earlier, while supplying arms to the front, the Turkish vessel Rusumat IV had been sunk by the Greeks near Giresun. A total of 11 soldiers were on board the mission. Under the pretext of maintenance, the Turkish gunboats approached the Russian port, trying to gather information about the Enosis, which was scheduled to depart the following day. It was discovered that the crew often visited a bar named the Great Revolution. Turkish agents Sürmeneli Hüseyin Çavuş and Giritli Mehmet, frequenting this bar, learned the exact date when the Enosis would sail. The ship was also carefully observed from a distance in case boarding would be required. The ship was scheduled to depart on April 26, 1922. Time was short, and the Turkish gunboat still lacked weapons. A message was sent to Trabzon, and on the night of April 18th, weapons were secretly loaded onto the boats. On April 25th, the two Turkish gunboats quietly left the harbor. But waiting in the open sea was dangerous, as the Enosis might detect them. For this reason, one of the boats released black smoke from its funnel and entered Jelinchik harbor near Novrossky, pretending to require repairs. At the time, maritime law forbade vessels from docking without reason. This maneuver both kept them out of sight and allowed them to watch the Enosis depart. The plan was clear. Once the Enosis moved away from the coast, they would follow and catch it off guard. That evening, the lights of the Enosis were spotted in the distance. Now it was time to act. Two small wolves were chasing a great elephant. But at that very moment, one of the old gunboats broke down. 21 men remained on the disabled vessel, while the remaining 9 soldiers transferred to the other boat. From that point, only one gunboat would attempt to seize the Enosis. Halit Çavuş prepared the cannon on board. A call for surrender was made to the Enosis, but the Greek ship ignored the tiny Turkish vessel and continued its course. The first shot was fired. The Enosis, attempting to ram the smaller vessel, was forced to stop after the second round. The Enosis was a merchant ship and had no weapons, but its size could have crushed the small gunboat, a risk too great to take. Traders on board panicked and rushed to the deck. At that moment, from the other side of the ship, 5 soldiers and 1 officer climbed aboard. With 6 Turkish soldiers on deck, the Enosis was captured. The first action was to seize the radio. Captain Izzet then addressed the terrified crew.
I am Captain Izzet, an officer of the Navy of the Grand National Assembly. As we are at war with Greece, this ship flying the Greek flag is hereby seized on behalf of my government. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now aboard a vessel that has fallen into the hands of the Grand National Assembly. Do not be afraid. Your lives and property are safe, provided you obey orders. But if you resist, the Enosis will be sent to the depths of the Black Sea. Do not forget that we are at war, and that you are on an enemy ship.
Greek sailor Pikarayanis later reported the incident to his authorities.
2 camelist boats approached the steamer. They were only noticed when within 50 meters. One learned the ship's name, then turned on its lights. Its captain shouted in English to the captain of the Enosis to stop. Receiving no reply, he repeated the order with a warning shot. Soon after, the other boat appeared on the opposite side. The Turkish craft were armed with 1 cannon and 2 small field guns. Within 15 minutes, the Enosis was seized.
At first, the Turkish boats did not fly their flag. They hoisted the Turkish flag only as they neared their own shores. The soldiers wore a type of naval uniform, while the officers were in civilian dress, with the distinctive kalpak hats used by Kemalist officers. The Enosis, originally bound for Istanbul, was redirected to the nearest Black Sea port. The standing order was clear: if there was any risk of recapture, the ship was to be sunk. Fortunately, that was not necessary. On April 28, 1922, the Enosis arrived at Hopa. As pre-arranged, 7 gunshots were fired as a signal meaning, "We have captured the ship, come meet us with boats." The people of Hopa rushed to the shore. Everything aboard the Enosis was unloaded. The captured crew was taken ashore for questioning. The critical question: where was the gold? For the treasure had not been found in the initial search. Records noted that the cargo included goatskins, intestines, 141 automobile tires, 6 crates of car parts, 4 crates of children's shoes, boxes of cigarette paper, and a crate of carpets. Items such as Persian rugs, typewriters, engines, and livestock were also recorded. These goods belonged to American and Italian merchants and were later returned to them in full. A month later, one prisoner named Korshi revealed the location of silver on the ship and was released. Soon after, the second captain admitted that the gold was hidden beneath the ship's panels. The treasure was discovered. The amount was substantial and was sent directly to Ankara. Some of it was distributed as reward to the sailors who had carried out the mission. The Enosis was renamed Trabzon and placed into service. With the funds, airplanes were ordered and new weapons purchased in time for the Great Offensive. The event was reported widely in the press. Turkish newspapers such as Akşam, Vakit, Yeni Şark, T, RC, U, M, and Hakimiyet İ recounted the operation in detail, with heroic tones. One paper headlined it, "The 2 heroic motors." The Greek press condemned the act, accusing the Turks of being desperate enough to seize traders' goods, and criticized the Soviet Union for allowing the Turkish vessels to operate from its ports. European newspapers, and even the New York Times, covered the story. Humiliated, the Greek Navy retaliated by targeting Samsun. With American warships looking the other way, they bombarded the city for 2 hours in violation of the laws of war. Over 500 shells were fired. 4 Turkish soldiers were killed. Buildings collapsed, military supplies were destroyed, and civilian shops and homes were ruined. The bombardment was so indiscriminate that even churches were damaged. Yet this was a desperate gesture, a sign of impending defeat. A few months later, the Greek forces had no choice but to retreat from Anatolia. The Enosis, renamed Trabzon, continued in service until 1934, when it was ceremonially retired. The term Enosis would later reappear, especially during the Cyprus conflict. It referred to the irredentist idea of uniting Greek populations outside Greece with the Greek state, most notably, the goal of annexing Cyprus to Greece. But this plan too ultimately failed. As this story ends, let us recall Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's words about the sailors of the War of Independence. Despite the enemy blockade and with only a few vessels, our navy performed wonders in the Black Sea, ensuring transport without losing a single ship. Their service deserves gratitude.